Hey, welcome to Viking Preparedness. I am Pastor Joe Fox. It is a cold and rainy day outside, and so we're going to shoot inside today, and the light's not great because if I were to face the windows, which would put the best light on my face, like you care, you'd see my messy house. So, no. We're going to talk today about selection criteria, things to consider when purchasing a retreat, and I add or a bug out location. The questions come from our own Viking Crystal Sharp, and so I'm going to kind of take what, like I do with everything, I'm going to take the gist of what she said. I like the idea. I'm going to roll with it. Okay, so there you go. My knee, starting yesterday afternoon, just like felt much better. So thank you all for your prayers and well wishes. It's working great. I mean, I'm not ready to jog yet, but it doesn't hurt, and I can actually walk. So there you go. Happy about that. So thanks again. Okay, when considerations for purchasing one's retreat. And I think I've covered this before, but we have a lot of new people. So the first thing, and I ask people this question, when we get people who decide they want to live near Shofar Mountain, and we've met and we all get along, so then we decide to assist them. One of the first questions I ask them is how much money you have to spend on land. I'd like to buy some land. Okay, I don't say how much land do you want to buy. I say how much money do you have to spend? What are you looking at? How much land can you afford? This is huge, and you have to know this because without knowing how much money you can afford to spend, you're wasting everybody's time, including your own, thinking about, looking at, dreaming about land. Let's get real. You got to figure out what you can afford. Most land, in my experience, is sold, the note is held by the owner. It's difficult in many places, perhaps not all. That's something worth investigating. Can I get a loan on land? The best case, of course, is to buy it outright. That's what I think. Other financial advisors may say no, no, no. But I think the best case is to buy it outright. But let's face it, most of us can't do that. I couldn't when we bought Shofar Mountain. So when you buy it from a landowner and they finance it, it's usually around 10 to 20% they want down. I think closer to 10, but I've seen it up there. Down, money down. And then, whatever interest rate you work out. When we bought Shofar Mountain, we had to put a big chunk of money down, and then it was 10% interest. That was back in the day. And so we knew how much we could afford a month. We knew how much we could afford to put down, and that told us, overall, we're looking at a piece of property this price. And so have your high end. What is your high end that you can afford? You have to understand that. You have to know that before you go looking at land. Clearly, you want to spend less. Got it. But what's the most you can afford for the perfect slice of heaven? What's the most you can afford? So know that. And again, you're gonna have to have money down, and you're gonna have to have monthly payments. So know what that is. The next thing, and I believe Crystal may have asked this, is how big of a piece, and I get this question a lot, how much land do I need to homestead? That's a huge question, and it depends. In the military, we say MET TC. It depends on a lot of factors. Number one, what do you want to do on it? And I think I can answer that question. Let's just assume you want to have a little house. You want to be able to grow food, probably in the form of gardens and orchards, and you want to raise some critters. And we'll keep it small, chickens and goats, right? Bam. How much land do you need? That depends entirely on where it is. If you are in the desert of Arizona, Yeah, I don't know how. I have no idea. I'm not a desert guy in that way. I don't know how much land you'd need to keep all that stuff going. If you're in, if you have a half an acre surrounded by national forests that you can graze your goats in and kind of plant gardens out there and stuff, maybe that'll work. That comes with its own problems. Have you guys seen? If you haven't, you should check them out. I've talked about them before. The Davares. You can look it up. I think they live in Anaheim or somewhere like that, California. And when they had a website, and they may still, I haven't been back there. I don't like them. I've never met them. I don't like them. I'll tell you why in a minute. But they were a family who bought a rundown ranch house in Cali, some kind of not great looking neighborhood. When you look at the pictures of when they bought it, they have like, over the years, this is our house. The place was a mess. And I think it's on a tenth of an acre lot. Little house on tenth of an acre. And they just went to town on it. And they produce a lot of food on that little tenth of an acre. I mean, a lot. And it's really cool to see what they can do. So how much land do they need? I think they're doing fine on a tenth of an acre. And so there's lessons to be learned there. I don't like them because they went to court and copyrighted the term backyard homestead or something like that. Some term like that. They copyrighted it, and then when people use it like on YouTube or in writing, they send lawyer letters, cease and desist. This is our term, and I think that's crap. Whatever, but they're growing a lot of food on a tenth of an acre. That's the point. I think you need some elbow room, right? Not only for security, but peace of mind, expansion, everything else. There is an argument to be made that on the right 5 acres, and I've made it, you can be pretty close to self-sufficient on 5 acres. I've given examples to people before of specific 5 acres where that could happen. And so I would say the minimum you want is a perfect 5 acres. But when Sister Kate and I, this was back in the late 80s, early 90s, started looking for land, we decided that the least amount of land we wanted was either 20 or 25 acres. I can't remember which one. But we made a little list, and we put that on the list. It has to have at least, let's just say 20. It has to have at least 20 acres. It has to cost less than this much money. That was our top end. And so those were the two things we determined first. You need to determine these things before you go looking at land. And so there is no easy answer. You're just going to have to look at the land, at the ability to grow food, raise animals, produce water, which we're getting to in the next thing. And so it's all different everywhere. Great land, you require less of it. Marginal land, you require more. So there's that. All right, what does it have to have on it? What things does it have to have? Well, again, entirely depends on you. But I submit that one of the things it has to have is water. You have to have water on your land. Somehow, some way, it is required for life. When we bought Shofar Mountain, we didn't know nearly as much as we do now. And back then we called it Foxhaven. That's the name we gave it. It was undeveloped raw land. There was nothing on it. It was trees to the edge. And we camped on it a couple times. But we decided once we started developing it that the very first thing we were going to do was put a well in. And if we couldn't get a well in, we were going to turn around and sell it before we did any more development on it, because water is life. If you don't have water, you can't do anything. And so, sure, you could drill a well anywhere. You can drill a well in the high desert of Arizona and get water. If you drill down, 15,000 feet, I made that number up, but sometimes you have to drill really deep. Well, can you afford that? We knew what we could afford for drilling a well, and so we drilled one, and, the Father blessed us. We got lots of water on our first well. You need water. I submit that the best water is a well, the second best water is rain catchment, and the third best water is running water. running water. like a river, a stream that runs all year round, that kind of thing. That's what I think. You may think differently, but there's no purification that needs to be done to a good well. You know, it just comes up and you can drink it. Rainwater requires a very little purification to use it, and really, really, yeah, not much. And groundwater, you know, river water, stuff like that, yeah, you need to purify that. And so those are more steps, right? Now, as far as irrigating crops and feeding animals and things like that, probably in that order, if that's what you're looking at, the best is like river, stream water if you can get it where you need it, and the next is rain, and the third is a well. So, you know, what do you want your water for? You want it for all things. But water's important. I've seen Marjorie Wildcraft. I've actually met her. We did a project partially together. Interesting person, smart, like engineer smart. And she had a video, I don't know, backyard food production, I think's what it was called. The information was outstanding. The delivery production, but the information was excellent. And at the time, they lived in like West Texas. It looked like desert. And they built a barn roof because she calculated we get this much rain here a year, this many square inches of rain equals this many gallons. You engineers are nodding, that's easy. And so she had these huge tanks, round tanks that she would fill up, you know, in the 3 times it rained a year, and that produced enough water for her to do her thing. If that's what you want to do, fine, but you have to incorporate that cost into your planning figures, and you have to ensure that you have water. So that's the one thing it has to have. The other thing, the next thing I think you need to consider is the ability to produce food on your land. And I'm not talking hunting. I'm talking agriculture. You are going to have to grow crops, you know, vegetables, wheat, I don't know, orchards, whatever, food. And I submit raised food, like meat, eggs, that kind of thing. And so your land needs to be able to support the producing of as much food as you think you're going to want to produce. Again, if you're starting out as a single individual or just a couple or just a small family, you're not going to make it very well as a one of, whether that's a little family or an individual. You're going to need more people. More people require more food. So you better think of that ahead a little bit. You know, if I have at least 6 adults here, and let's call it, you know, 4 kids with 6 adults, how much food are we going to need? How much food are we going to need to produce? Again, those are your figures. You're going to have to figure that out. But it starts telling you how much land you're going to need at a minimum. So water and the ability to produce food, grow crops, ability to, what does that say? Sorry, I made notes for this one. Oh, you need the ability to regulate your temperature on the land. What do I mean by that? If you are in desert where it gets 135 degrees, you're going to probably want to dig down, right? So that factors into your costs. Yeah, sure, get your e-tool out and start digging. I just got I'm going to be doing a video on this. I bought this just because I've already bought as many axes and hatchets as my wife wants me to have. So I bought the cold steel shovel, the Spetsnaz shovel, and I have one coming from the former Soviet bloc, a real Russian one that this was designed after, and so then I'm going to play with them. But bottom line is you're not digging a basement for your house with this, right? So you're going to have to pay for it. You got to factor that in. If it's cold, how are you going to heat the place in the winter? Now, we're buying this as a homestead for bad times, right? And so when your oil runs out, when your propane runs out, what are you going to heat with? Firewood or coal, I'm thinking. Where are you going to get it? Ideally, your land has the ability to produce it all. At Shofar Mountain, we have dead trees for days. Yeah, no problem. We don't even have to cut live trees for firewood. Think about that. We talked about buying as an alternate, like level four, bug out location, a chunk of land up in North Dakota, where at the time we were looking at it, land was going very inexpensively. And so we're like, hey, let's buy like 40 acres up there, put a couple houses on it, little cabins for the crew, and just have it. We'll go up there pheasant hunting or something, a couple times a year. The problem is heating it in the wintertime. North Dakota gets cold. There's no trees for the most part. So how are you going to get the stuff to heat it? We looked at parts of Kansas, central Kansas, just prairie. It's like high desert almost, high plains, and western Kansas. Land's pretty cheap, especially if you start buying 100 acres of it. It's not that expensive, but again, how are you going to heat it in the wintertime? There are no buffalo chips to burn anymore. And so our thought was, if we do this, and clearly we haven't, or I wouldn't be talking about it, if we do this, we're going to factor into the cost bringing in a couple train cars full of coal and doing the trick where you bury the coal in a hole and set up your wood stoves as coal-rated heating stoves. And then, day to day, regular times, you just buy firewood wherever, ship it from Shofar Mountain. But if you actually have to bug out there and you need to heat for multiple winters, you dig into your coal. So that's an option. But you got to think about that. How are you going to regulate the temperature of your place? And now I will tell you, as far as air conditioning goes, most Americans are soft. And even some Shofarians are soft who live in regular houses. Sister Kate and I acclimate really well to the weather because we have to. And we even now have a small air conditioner that we can run 2 hours a day on a sunny day. But really, you just have to get used to living with it. When I talk about air conditioning as far as regulating temperature, I'm talking about over 100, right? You're going to have to do something about that. So think about that. All right. Things to avoid. Covenants. Housing, rules. You can and can't do these things on your property. Even out in rural areas, some of those exist, especially when somebody develops like one of those places that I've just been to like 3 of them lately, where somebody takes a piece of land, puts a couple roads through it, and then has like campsites or small lots that all people buy for like their vacation getaways. A lot of them have covenants, and if they do, you kind of want to run away because you can't do your own thing on there. Another thing you want to look for, look for, you don't want a whole lot, ideally, you don't want any building codes in your county. It's amazing the number of comments I got on that one shed video I did. That doesn't meet code. That'll never stand. They're going to make you tear that down. You're an idiot. There are no codes in my county. You can build whatever you want. You can build a meth shed and move a whole family into it. There's no building codes here. Having said that, you should kind of follow what building codes are because most of them are for your safety. But you don't want them because then that's just more taxes and more people snooping around your place and that kind of thing. So you want to avoid building codes. You want to avoid criminals. Certain places in the country, you drive around and it's like, man, there is a bunch of meth here. That's a problem. Your chainsaw's going to walk away if there's a bunch of meth heads around. And so I always tell people when you're looking at a potential piece of land, drive all the roads around the perimeter of that land. See what's over there and out there and evaluate the people based on how they keep their place. People with drug problems, many times, have really nasty places. Nasty. A year and a half worth of trash in the front yard. Oh yeah, that's out there. You don't want those people for nearby neighbors. They got a problem. And other things. But reading the paper, talking to the sheriff, sometimes the sheriff's the problem. There are crooked sheriffs out there. You got to talk to people. You want to avoid criminals. You don't want to move into areas. We have somebody here, off-grid friend or something, had all kinds of problems with neighbors and people not helping her. Yeah. Watch out for that. Don't buy a place and think they'll leave you alone. They probably won't. When you're the new person, everybody wants to know what you're up to. Okay, so there's that. And then another set of questions that she asked. Um, well, should I not shop for it now because of the coronavirus? Blah. Calm down. It's not time to panic yet. I happen to know what, and this this is a little more direct than I normally am, but I'm just going to use it. I know what Crystal does for a job. You interact with people every day. Interacting with two or three more realtors who are taking you around to look at places isn't going to significantly up your exposure to potential coronavirus. It's just not. Now, if you're totally isolated and you're like, I'm isolating now, I'm not going to meet anybody, okay, then you're probably not going to buy anything right now. You have to meet people to close. I guess you could go and mop for. But yeah, and the thing is, you can do a lot of your shopping for land. I know we did online. Now it's online. We did it through magazines and flyers and stuff. But you can get online. Once you have what I just talked about, the things you want to consider, you can look online. You can call up the realtor and say, hey, I'd like to go look at it. Sure, I'll take you out and show it to you. No, it's fine. I'll go look at it myself. Do I have permission to be on the property? I mean, you could do that if you wanted to. I like going out with the realtor and asking deep probing questions. Why are they selling it? How long have they had it? Blah, blah, blah. Things like that. What are these people up to? So there you go. Those are my advice. Some of y'all are on homesteads or have thought this through yourself. Please, what do you think one should look for or avoid in a homestead? I just caution you that if you don't actually have a homestead and you're just coming up with these ideas, think it through. Has to have running water on it. Does it? What if you could have a well drilled for $1,000 that produces a bazillion gallons of fresh, clean water a day? Does it still have to have running water? Okay, if it has to have running water, you do realize that you just upped the price of that land a lot, right? I mean, these are factors, right? So think about them. But I am interested in what y'all say because you may tell me something. Many of the people I know who have come out of Her My People kind of bought their land almost sight unseen or very little explored, and it worked out. It worked out. Another thing to think about is you can make a go at almost anything. I mean, humans live in the Kalahari, and humans live north of the Arctic Circle. Arctic Circle. We can live anywhere. You just have to decide what you're willing to put up with. What are your assets? What are your must-haves? What are your can't-haves? What are your nice-to-haves? What are your nice-not-to-haves? I wish you luck. All right. I'll see you out there.